Welcome back. We're continuing our discussion on creating a content management system from scratch. I'm going to go over everything that I've changed and then go over what I will be changing for the next video. So I've done a little bit of work on this toolbar here on the right to just keep it at a fixed location with fixed icons and then varying which icons are interactive. I'm going to delete this settings.json file in site root CMS data folder, and that will allow us to enter the setup location. So I'm going to type that in, and so you can see that the toolbar remained at the same location with the same icons, but they're all disabled because the setup wizard hasn't been run yet. There is no settings.json here. I've also added an additional constraint to the setup wizard, which is that it can only appear when all users have the administrator role and only the administrator role. I've also added a local application cache that I have to mention real quick because that's how I'm assigning the roles for now. So this is a local application cache that's ultimately getting its data from persistent storage, which happens to be database right now. Temporarily, I'm just adding a single role of administrator, which is why we can see the setup section. But if I were to change this to something else, then I would not be able to access the setup wizard. And it says setup wizard is disabled. It cannot be used when non-administrator users exist. And assuming our logic is correct, then users without administrator roles would never exist unless and until the setup wizard had already been run at least once. So it should be reasonable to redirect to the home page because the home page is automatically created as part of the setup wizard process. So there should never be a case where you end up in a page that doesn't exist unless you're just, ruining data on purpose. So let me go back and make that administrator again. And then I'm going to go back to setup. Well, actually, it automatically redirected me to setup because there's no settings.json file here. So this is still just kind of a suggestion. I'm definitely going to be adding fields to it, and I'll be talking about that in a moment. I have it set up so that when I submit, it creates this settings.json file, and it redirects me to the home page. It says setup wizard is complete, and now some of these are going to be accessible again. So if I were to go back to setup, because at this point, I'm still an administrator and only administrators exist, so this page is still accessible for now. But we see the toolbar now gives us direct access to the front end and the back end. So let me talk about some changes to scope. So the most important is I've implemented a temporary local application cache. So like these two here. And so this first one is saying that web traffic and information is going to come from one thing or the other, either a temporary local application cache or persistent storage. And if you were to choose persistent storage, you also get to choose your mechanism. So it could be a database or it could be a local file system where there might be one or more files. I haven't quite decided how I'm going to represent data. But in theory, anything that can be stored in a database can be stored in one or more files. I'm not saying it's good, I'm just saying it's possible. And for the sake of simplicity in setup and thinking that people might be downloading this code, maybe they've never used a database before, maybe they just want to drop a zip file into an IIS directory and be up and running. I am going to provide one example of local file system persistence as well as one example of a database. And if you use a different database, then you can extend this tool. I've also removed some scope. So around user membership settings, I removed a lot of things that I'm personally not going to use. And the goal of this project is to create something functional and functional for me, but not necessarily to make it so generic that it can accommodate anyone's use case. And if you don't like something that I've removed, you can download my code and extend it, or you can write your own CMS. That's always an option. I have here a live preview of switching out simple versus detailed icons. So basically every icon on the page, because we're in the CMS itself, all these icons, the search icon, the icons on the toolbars, and the icons here within the CMS itself, they're all changing on the fly as I'm switching this between simple and detailed. So this could also be something that could be extended, and you could have other themes, but I think for my purposes, these two are sufficient to demonstrate this mechanism, and I kind of like the simple ones, to be honest. So that's pretty much the changes to scope and settings. Oh, the other thing real quick that I'll mention is I haven't quite decided yet whether I'm going to keep this as one long page with a submit button at the bottom, or whether I'm going to make it a tabbed interface where each tab basically matches one section of field set here, each with its own little button. So I don't know the answer to that yet, but I will think about it. So here's the routing rules. And so this is a module that I've mocked up. Now, a lot of these things like users, roles, pages, routing, etc., they're going to share a common feature set. And so that feature set might include a search or filter function, as well as the ability to add, modify, delete entities within that scope. And so that's basically what I have here is I have a search and filter area at the top, and then I have the ability to add, in this case, routing rules, and then to view routing rules. We have actions over here to delete routing rules. Now I did think, what about modify? And for a time I had modify here, but then I ultimately decided that, again, this is for simplicity and for me, and if you want to extend it, you can extend it. It would be very, very easy to implement a modify, because it doesn't even have to modify the record. It could just be a compound action of a deletion and an addition, which are already implemented. So that would be really easy, and I just don't think it's necessary. I want to keep the UI, the interface, with the fewest number of buttons and actions possible. So I only implemented add and delete. Let me look over here real quick at the actual module. So this is the front end of the module, so that is the title. This is the markup required for this, so very simple. And then we have a section for additions, a section for user-defined, and a section for system-defined. We have a small script here so that when you click on a delete action, it will clear out these fields related to additions. It will write the ID of the record to be deleted into a hidden field, and then it will simulate a click. And that's basically the front end for now. I'm going to add some more actual pattern-based HTML5 validation in the future. There's a lot of to-dos in this project. It's a very big project. This is the back end of the module, which is pretty much all validation. You're basically saying if the form was submitted, if we're doing an addition. So if we're doing an addition, then we're running the code that's selected there. It's pretty much all validation. Otherwise, if we're doing a deletion, then we're going to delete from persistent storage. And in the future, when I have persistent storage able to be set to either database or local file system, then lines like this will be in some sort of if-else or case condition. It won't just be literally trying to interact with a database that may not exist. But this is affecting the persistent storage, and then this is mirroring the same change across the local application cache. And so like I mentioned, this is all pretty much just, for the additions, this is all pretty much just validation. And so if it's not valid, then it will show you a notification. And if it is valid, which would be here, then we're going to insert into our persistent storage, insert into our local application cache, and that's about it. So all these various checks, these are regexes to make sure that you're not redirecting sensitive parts of the CMS, or that you're not trying to redirect things that already exist as a page in the CMS itself. So for example, if I had a page at /z, then I should not be able to add a user-defined routing rule taking /z and moving it somewhere else, because we want /z to actually render the page. And then I also have rules to prevent cycles and infinite redirects. So let's do some examples. So I'm going to say /same going to /same, and that's disallowed because they cannot be equal. And if I do /same, and then in the destination, I'm allowing question mark and equal sign. So even though these two are not the same literal, they are the same base path, and I've chosen to consider that to be the same. So it does not accept that either. Now let's look at our existing rules here. So we have existing rules of /AA going to /BB. So let's say we have /CC going to /AA, and so that's invalid. The destination cannot be the source of another routing rule. And then likewise, so yeah, we can't do /CC to /AA because /AA is the source of another rule. And we also can't do /AA to /CC because /AA already exists, and that would produce an ambiguous situation. So it already exists in another entry. So the idea is I'm doing a bunch of different checks, and I'm providing the appropriate response here. And then I'm also in the logic, I'm checking to see whether or not I've already shown a notification, just so that I can limit the amount of information I'm providing to the user. So even if the user is violating like 6 different rules, we're just going to show them one notification. And then of course we can go here and we can delete and delete. So let's use some of these as an example. So this is a redirect from /Z to something that doesn't exist. So I'm going to click on /Z. We see that it pulled up the NotFound handler. And again, all these purple ones, these are just debugging for me. Those will go away at some point. Now let's add something like /OK, just going to the site root. So that does exist, and that's pulling in hello world. And this is coming from the actual database. I've manually entered some database data. So I'm going to show that now. So this is the pages table. We have 2 pages with IDs 1 and 6. View roles allow the administrator to view them, and everyone is an administrator right now. And then we have the actual URLs. And so this page ID 1 is bound to this URL, which we were currently looking at. And if I go to page module assignments, again, looking at page ID 1, which happens to be the top row here, I've just manually entered this information in. So we see view roles still allows administrator. The publishing start, publishing end is valid. And then we have this rendered output field. And normally this rendered output field would be pre-calculated based on the linked content. So we have this content ID. Right now I've just hand whacked it in as 0, which is of course not a valid piece of content. But in the future, there will be a process that will pre-calculate this rendered output field based on whatever content we've linked to. And that way we just don't have to traverse tons of tables and go through tons of inefficiency just because we have a relational database on the back end. But this is the literal content that's being shown. And here's another example. This is page A, and that's for page 6, which, let's go back to our pages. So page 6 is bound to the URL /A. So let's go over here to /A. Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to have to fix that. Yeah, I can see something is adding multiple page parameters here. Anyway, I guess I have a little bug to fix, but the idea is that when it's working, the 404 handler shows when it should show, and the rendered content shows when it should show. But okay, not perfect. Anyway, that is pretty much the updates, a little bit of change in scope and a change to the toolbar, and I've added this routing section here. Obviously, there's a lot more to go. In the future, in addition to fixing the bug, is I'll probably look at pre-rendering all the menus. So the sidebar, the main menu across the top, and probably the breadcrumbs as well. Actually, not the breadcrumbs, just the main menu and the side menu. Those are essentially static, where each object in the list has a property reflecting which roles can see those things. So I think I can basically produce a static list that can then be very quickly and easily filtered dynamically, and that'll probably be faster than rebuilding the page hierarchy every time a page loads. So that's in the mix for the future. But I think that's all I've got for this video. Thanks for watching.